You're watching PEGRI TV, Rhode Island's public access channel.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Advance Rhode Island. I'm Dan McKee, the Rhode Island Lieutenant Governor, and each month we do a show on work that we're doing in our office, whether it has to do with veterans issues or small business issues, education. Today we have a great panel to talk about long-term health care, which I co-chair with my friend here, Maureen, on the monthly meetings and talk about long-term health care issues. And today we have a number of individuals. We're going to talk about building an age-friendly community, a report that has been done and has been kind of spearheaded by Maureen and others in the state, and talk about what it means to have an age-friendly community in terms of the senior community. And also we're going to talk about a very serious topic that has to do with senior abuse issues, and we have individuals here that can kind of speak to that. And also, as you're out there and listening, we'll provide contact information. If something comes up that you feel as though is important for you to learn more about, we're going to provide that to you. And so what I want to do is just welcome everybody here today. It's great to have you here. If we could just introduce ourselves as we go around the table and talk about why, what role you play in your careers and in your work and your volunteer work and also past work that really makes you interested in this topic. So, Maureen, why don't you introduce yourself? You're the chairperson of the Subcommittee on Aging and Communities, and please introduce yourself to everyone, and then let's move on.
Thank you, Governor McKee. I'm delighted to participate in this panel. And by way of background, I was a former director of our Department of Elderly Affairs and was very interested, and I sought that position because of my interest in our older population. Since then, I've also worked managing the Long-Term Care Coordinating Council, and now I am a member of that council. And I was delighted to chair the Aging and Community Subcommittee. And I also do policy work for a number of organizations, including the Senior Gender Coalition of Rhode Island. I serve as their long-term care policy consultant. So that's background of what brings me to the table in today's panel.
Well, I appreciate the fact that you kind of stepped in and guided me a little bit, because the long-term health care, which I'm co-chair, I certainly have a lot to learn about the technicalities that we're going to be talking about today, and you've been great, Maureen, so thank you for doing that. Yeah. Bill, please introduce yourself to everybody.
I'm Bill Flynn. I'm the Executive Director of the Senior Agenda Coalition. I've been in this position almost 10 years. We've been around longer than that. And really, we do community organizing and advocacy, and particularly trying to build power for seniors to work for particularly more opportunities for seniors to age in the community, remain in the community, and stay out of residential care. And we really believe that the key to that is getting more people engaged and empowered. And we had a recent victory by doing that, and that we were able to restore no-fare bus passes that had been repealed 2 years ago. And that, for 9,000 disabled people and about 4,000 seniors. So we think that even though there are many seniors, seniors need to have a lot more political power and just power in general in order to get what they really want in the community.
Well, thank you for your leadership, Bill, and I've appreciated again you getting right in to see me very early in the time frame that after I was sworn in, and it's very important for us to be able to be a voice and to support the things that expert people like yourself and Maureen and others that are here today, we need to be educated, and then we want to follow your lead. So thank you for
we appreciate
involving me. And Detective, please introduce yourself. All the way from Charlestown. One of the themes of our office is the number 39, because there's 39 cities and towns in the state of Rhode Island. So when we're doing our small business tours, we're in every community. So if we do a farm in Tiverton, we do one in Charlestown, we do something in Woonsocket, we do something in down in Westerly. So Charlestown, thank you. I'm not sure we've ever had anybody on the show from Charlestown. So introduce yourself.
To be here, sir.
Yes, this is great. Although I do know Pat Anderson, who was the finance director down there when I was mayor.
She's a very good person.
Pat was in my finance office when I was mayor of the town of Cumberland.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
Well, as you said, I am Detective Kevin Ryan, Charlestown Police Department. I work in criminal investigations, Amber Alert Operations Officer, and also the senior advocate dealing with crimes and abuse and neglect against senior citizens. And it's very important to open communication between the different facilities, caretakers, and the Department of Elderly Affairs to be able to plan out and assess what the needs are for the betterment of the welfare of the senior citizens in our community. Because often it goes unsaid what their needs are, because they in turn are often afraid to speak out. And
kind of a Bill was just saying,
many
right?
times the caregivers are family members, and so it's difficult for them to reach out and understand that there are a lot of resources. So before thinking about arresting anybody, I'm thinking about what resources are available to them to make them give better care to the senior citizens of our community.
So good police, community policing. As a mayor, that was just so incredible education I had. Of course, Tony Silva, who was on my chief of police when I was a mayor at one time, is now my chief of staff, to do some emergency management issues with us. But he brings a wealth of knowledge, and to have you here today, and thank you for the work that you do in the communities. I always felt as though that the three kind of tiers of a community were, public safety as number one, and good finances, and then also strong schools, and you can build a real solid community if you have that. So thank you for your work.
You're very welcome. Okay. Thank you for having me here, sir.
And Boca, please introduce yourself and give us a little bit of summary about what you bring to the table here today in terms of elderly affairs, and on your new promotion too, right? Your new appointment.
Thank you.
Yes,
thank you
congratulations
for having me over. My name is Boca Kamara, and I work with the Division of Elderly Affairs Protective Services Unit. I serve as an abuse investigator. A couple of months ago, actually 2 months ago, I've just been fortunate to be promoted as a supervisor. So I'm currently serving in that role, and the Division of Elderly Affairs, we are responsible to investigate allegations of abuse for Rhode Islanders 60 and older. And we do collaborate with the police, the long-term ombudsman, I'm sorry.
Oh, and she is an ombudsman.
Yeah, ombudsman.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
I learned very early in my meetings that was the
Safe
case.
Haven, and basically, and together we do a great job, because our primary goal is to make sure that we serve around elderly population, make sure that they live a decent and dignified life. And I'm glad to be here and to be part of this discussion.
Well, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate it, and I know the work. We'll be talking a little bit about this booklet, and that comes from Elderly Affairs, and the work that Elderly Affairs does, and how important that is to the state of Rhode Island. So thank you for being here, Boca.
Thank you.
Okay, Jean, give us a little overview of what's going on there at St. Elizabeth's and the work that you're doing.
I'm Jean Gategno, and I'm the program director in the St. Elizabeth's community. And I'm program director of The Haven. The Haven is the only shelter and community intervention program for abused elders in the state. We actually are the second shelter to be created in the nation. And
where's that located?
We're located in one of the many facilities that the St. Elizabeth's community operates. Okay. We're based upon a national model, and that is that when an elder needs to be sheltered, we look within our system the nursing home, the assisted living, the rehab center, because St. Elizabeth's is a broad program. And we identify a bed, and an elder person will be placed in that bed so that it can be anywhere within our system. And we don't generally publicize where that is.
Oh, okay. I was wondering why
Yes.
you were reluctant to say where that was, but now I know.
First of all, it's kind of floating, but
Okay.
second of all, you know, our goal is to keep the elder safe from the abuser. And so it's important that we provide that kind of privacy and secrecy. We also have a second part of our program, and it's a community-based elder justice advocate program. And this year we initiated an effort to be able to do intervention services in the community. Oftentimes seniors are referred to us through Bowtie and his organization, but are reluctant to leave the home. The question that we have then is, we know that there's abuse, we know that they are unsafe, so what do we do about that? So we're able to go in and provide some case management, information referral, and most importantly, safety training for the elder. So we're expanding our program, but I'm happy to be here and to be able to talk about it.
So is it a statewide network that anybody can access, or is it a particular area of the state?
It's a statewide program,
Beautiful.
and in order for, let me just say that in all cases of the shelter, the investigation is done by the Department of Elderly Affairs. In the other types of referrals that we receive, whether that's from a senior center or a community action program, then we go into the home, so that we're building a network with the agencies, with the police departments, with the state, with community agencies, to be able to identify elder abuse and also to bring people together to help solve the
We'll hear a little
problem.
more about that at the second half of the show, and I think it's an important topic, and thank you so much for bringing that your wealth of experience to the table here. I think that the public is going to, and the people who watch this show are going to really learn a lot, as I'm going to learn a little bit more than I can say, right? More than I probably need at some point in time, but I do need the education, so thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy, and you're ombudsman?
My name is Kathy Herron.
Yes.
Thank you for having me here today.
Okay.
I'm the Rhode Island Long-Term Care State Ombudsman, and very easily translated is my job through my office, which I have nurses and social workers, is to advocate for seniors that are receiving long-term care services. And what that would take in is nursing homes, assisted living, people on home care, and people receiving hospice services. The Ombudsman grant comes through the Department of Elderly Affairs, even though our agency still, that we're housed in, maintains its independence. There's only 10 agencies in the whole United States that are independent. Others go through the government program. So we're unique in that particular aspect of that. We will go in and we will defend somebody's rights that live in long-term care. It's so important that people that live in long-term care and receive those services are able to keep their self-esteem, their dignity, and be able to have a quality of life. My office also serves on many committees that does the promotion of legislative actions and advancement in community programs. So we stay pretty busy, but we're located on Post Road, and at 422 Post Road, and our telephone number is 785-3340. There is no charge for our services. You get anyone in my office, you can call. I answer the phone. I also do advocate work still.
So what's a typical call? Not there's a typical call, but would you give me an example of one of the calls that you're taking to help the seniors out?
Well, we'll get a call from a senior saying that the nursing home is losing all their laundry. And that may not seem like a big deal, but when you only have a limited amount of clothing to wear, or they may call and tell us that the air conditioning isn't working and there's no fans. So then we'll go in and we'll, take care of that. We'll find out the reason behind that. Sometimes a family member calls and says that their mother or father are afraid to speak up, but that their food is cold every night.
Okay.
So-
Good practical things.
All
that,
good practical
yes,
things, but
yes.
then we also have things that are not good.
Yes.
We have people that are getting abused, either by their caregivers
Yeah.
or by their family members, so we also act on that.
Yeah. Well, it's important work, and thank you. And again, thank you for being such a lively participant in all the long-term help meetings.
Well, I wanted to break you in early.
Oh, man, you did. Oh my God, I walked home and said, oh my God, I wonder how I'm doing that. But thank you for being here. This is wonderful. And I think we have another person joining us.
Yes,
Mary Lou.
hi.
And so what we're doing is just kind of introducing ourselves. I know it's
Okay.
on the run here a little bit.
Okay.
We're going to be we're going to be talking about building an age-friendly community in the first part of the show, and then we're also going to be talking about senior abuse issues in the second half of the show. But we're kind of we just went around the crew here, and everybody introduced themselves and why that is something that's of interest to you. Those topics, the senior topics, and being as a director of a senior center, I would imagine that's an important piece.
It's a huge piece. So my name is Mary Lou Maureen. I'm the director of the Leon Matthews Senior Center in Pawtucket, and also a member of the Rhode Island Senior Center Directors Association, and a member of the Long-Term Care Coordinating Council. So yes, to build an age-friendly community is a big piece of what senior centers, are all about.
Absolutely. I was mentioning earlier that we have a theme to our office, Mary Lou, of the number 39, because there's 39 cities and towns, and there's all of them are important, and we're in one, we're going to be in all of them. And that we just started in the Lincoln Senior Center our tour of senior centers in the state of Rhode Island just this week.
Yeah.
And the work that goes on there, the activity levels, just describe a couple of the activity levels that happen in a senior center.
Yeah, so pretty much across the state, there is some form of senior center or community center, depending on what the resources are within the community. So we offer everything from social and human service support, as well as a wide variety of programs and activities that engage older adults and make sure that they're emotionally and physically fit. We try to, meet the requests of the individuals too, of what they would like to pursue in this stage of their lives.
Yeah, it's great, and when I was a mayor, we knew that was a big part of our community, and we had hundreds of people that came, and people can kind of go across community lines into these senior centers.
They
right?
most certainly can, and we have it happening all the time, because one center might not be offering, the exact program or service that the person is looking for. So, we don't mind that.
So the idea is that we want to be a statewide network that's really servicing the seniors in all our communities, and if we can cross work with other communities, that's a good thing to do.
Right.
Yeah, I know when I was in Lincoln, there was multiple communities that were at that Lincoln Center with Lois, and I was with Joe Alman, the town administrator over there, and meeting people from different type of classes, from whether it's exercise class or whether they're doing some stitching classes.
Right.
Or,
And lifelong learning,
yes.
lifelong learning opportunities, and intergenerational programming are two big focuses that most of the centers are trying to focus on. But really keeping them engaged and hooking them up with different opportunities, whether it be, most of us have nutrition sites even within our buildings. So we're really kind of like a one-stop shopping. And originally the senior centers were developed to be a focal point on aging, and
well, that's what we're going to talk
that's
about.
kinda
We're going to get into kind of a little bit of a detail. I know that there's a lot of challenges out there. I'll just kind of put my 2 cents in. I think there's going to be a challenge on the electric rates right now for our seniors, right? And so I've intervened with the Public Utility Commission on issues that have to do with ratepayers and in particular small business, but all the ratepayers in the state. And there was a fairly sizable rate increase that was just put in, right, of 53% on the standard offer. That's going to impact seniors. And so we've been out there educating the work that we've been doing in our office, setting up helping with the Division of Public Utilities, setting up a website where right now, and I just did it, and I'm encouraging everybody that's out there to kind of hear what can happen, but I just bypassed and avoided the entire rate increase by shopping my electricity for the next 6 months. And every ratepayer in the state of Rhode Island could do that. And every senior who has an electric bill that they're paying could do the same thing. We just got to get out there and educate people. So I just stole a minute and a half to kind of tell people out there that that's available, and call our office if you actually want to avoid that rate increase, because there's a lot of anxiety over it. And when at the hearing you had people come up to the microphone one after the other, and all different constituencies were represented there, and the senior community was in particular very vocal yesterday about what that means to them. So, but it falls right in line with this whole age-friendly community, building that age-friendly community, and I can tell you that Maureen was a champion of that effort. And so, Maureen, why don't you introduce the next segment of what we're going to be talking about is this report, and why that report's important.
Thank you, and thank you for all the work you're doing on utility rates and making sure that they are affordable for everyone, particularly all our older population, many of whom are on fixed incomes, and they really, don't. When we have Social Security COLAs either not coming or like 1% or even less than 1%, it's really important that we make things affordable for people. But let me give you a little background on how this plan came about. I've been working, and I said in my introduction, I was formerly at Elderly Affairs directing the department, and for many years worked with the Long-Term Care Coordinating Council. And one of the things that has always struck me is the fact that as a state, we've really put a lot of our emphasis on nursing homes, and we need to have good quality nursing homes. And I'm proud to say, and I think Kathy would agree with me, that for the most part we do have good quality nursing homes in our state. But we know surveys show that most older people want to stay at home for as long as they can and live in the communities that they know well and that they've been participating in their whole life.
Yes, my mom is one of those.
Your mom is one of those,
89 years old, yes.
So I've been working with Bill Flynn from the Senior Agenda Coalition, and their big push is aging in community. And we had seen a sort of a deterioration, we felt, in what was going on at the state level in terms of supporting our seniors. And we say that because we saw a reduction in funding, state funding, going to senior centers. We saw a reduction in funding from the state going to Meals on Wheels. We saw a reduction from the state in our respite program for caretakers of seniors who remain at home. And so we thought, we've really got to do something about this, because we need to make our officials and the state as a whole aware of the fact that we have going to have a dramatic increase in the number of seniors in the years ahead. For example, in 2010, we had about 152,000 people in the state age 65 and older. Now, in 2017, we're about 170,000. And the projections are that by 2030, we're going to have 100,000 more people age 65 and older than we did in 2010. That's going to be about 1 in every 4 Rhode Islanders are going to be age 65 and older. So Bill and I talked about what could we do to bring attention to the, really enormous growth in our older population, and what can we do to help them remain home and community and support them to remain as healthy as possible and engaged in the community. So we came up with this piece of legislation that called for 2 things. 1, to restore the funding cuts, and 2, to create this
How do we make out on that?
Not too well.
Not too well. That's why there's
there's a little bit of good
news.
Yes,
okay. Yes. Because I know I signed a letter supporting that.
You
Yes.
did. And I'll get to that, how well we did. So the second part of that was to create this Aging in Community Subcommittee under the Long-Term Care Coordinating Council. And that's where you came in.
Yeah.
When you took office. The subcommittee had been up and running for just a few months, and I had been asked to chair it, and I said, well, I'll do that for about a year. And here we are, 3 years.
It's the old 80-20 rule, right?
Yeah, exactly. But
20% to 80% of the work.
We had a really amazing group of people on the subcommittee: academia, advocates, people from state agencies, providers, and we met for about a year and a half. And our charge was threefold. 1, to look at services and resources we have, to identify the gaps, and 3, develop a strategic plan as we move forward. And I'm pleased to say that we fulfilled our charge.
Yes.
Last June, we issued our final report, and as part of that process, we wanted to hear from seniors themselves. We just didn't want it to be, you know, sort of top down. So what we did with the cooperation of our Division of Elderly Affairs, who provided a little bit of funding, we held some focus groups across the state. We had about 100 seniors come to these focus groups. We had 10 different focus groups. We had them in various areas of the state, and we heard from seniors themselves. And in a nutshell, what they had to say, number one, they highly value their senior centers. They really love the senior centers.
That is great to hear.
You know, they're a home away from home for so many of our seniors, particularly those who are alone at this point in their lives. And one of the things I've done in the past is really look at our older population and look at the fact, because women live longer, and I don't know the reason for that, but we have considerable number of older women who are living alone, more so than older men. And that's really important, that they have places like a senior center to go to develop new friendships. So they also told us that transportation was a huge issue. For those who could still drive, they worried about, well, what's going to happen when I can no longer drive. And we know, as a woman, I know that past age 70, and I'm there, I might spend 10 years unable to drive. And that's really a big deal. And so putting transportation systems in place is really important. And then we talked about things like, can people stay in their homes because housing costs just increase every year, and if you're on a fixed income, if your property taxes go up, your utility bills go up, etc. Or if you can't afford home maintenance services, yard work, snow shoveling, all that, but you really want to stay in your home, or maybe you need some home modifications, but you don't know, can I get some help to do that? So there's just a few of the things that seniors told us. And so based upon those findings from seniors themselves and a lot of research about what's going on in the state, where the services are, et cetera, and also looking at a worldwide program that was developed by the World Health Organization called Age-Friendly Communities, and they identified 8 domains that make up what makes a community age-friendly. So we looked at that, and that served as a guide, but we added to that 8 domains that they published, one called economic security, because we really thought that that was important, and that's what seniors told us, that they're really frightened about what's going to happen in the future. If I can't stay in my own home, what's going to happen to me? Where can I go? And can I afford assisted living, which in the state of Rhode Island, maybe you could find one for $4,500 a month, but you know, could be as high as $6,000 a month. Nursing homes, we have some of the highest cost for nursing homes in the country, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, because we have good nursing homes. But you know, if you're looking at private pay, $250, $300 a day or more, you know, that's kind of overwhelming for people to think about. Or even home care. If the rate, hourly rate is something like $22 or $24 per hour, how much of that can I afford? And what help can I get from the state? People sometimes are only looking for a little bit of help. We have our Medicaid program, which is excellent, but there are a lot of people who are low income and not eligible for Medicaid, but they really need some financial assistance.
And you also broke down the report a little bit by community too, right?
We did.
Yeah, so
we did.
I really kind of like that, so people can kind of see how you measured those 10 things, so that municipal leaders and other leaders in the communities can kind of look at how they can make an improvement. Let's get to Bill for a second, though. You want one more thing?
One more thing.
Okay, go ahead. Then you're in control. It takes your report.
I just want to say that. So, using all that,
I'm going to take a little drink.
We developed a strategic plan, and then as a follow-up, we created what we call the Age-Friendly Rhode Island Coalition, and I'll talk about that a little later.
Yes.
But and then I'll segue to Bill.
Yeah, we're segue to Bill. Bill, tell us why this report is kind of important to the work that you're doing, that you explained earlier in terms of working with seniors and advocating for seniors.
Well, I think the report does a real good job of specifically pointing out the importance of these issues and the importance, for example, of senior centers took a big cut back in 2008, and ever since 2008 we've been fighting to get some of that money restored as senior population has gone up. Another thing that senior centers are is a trusted source of information, and that is one of the biggest challenges for people if they want to stay in the community, is getting a trusted place where they can get good information. We are not an age-friendly state compared to other states. Other states, and what we need to do following their pattern, we need from the top down agreement that we're going to have a long-term effort to invest in the kind of programs that are proven elsewhere to allow people not only to stay in the community but not be isolated. Isolation is the biggest threat to people's health. And there's now research where they follow like thousands of people for 7 years, and who were the people who were sort of connected to the community and who weren't. They didn't, they separate out income and so forth. And it's people who have connections with their church, with their senior center, whatever, 28% chance of, of living much longer. And the way that has to happen.
That's a good message for the public, everybody to hear, especially if they happen to be the kids in the family and the parents are getting a little older, to make sure that that connection is always there in their lives, right, Bill?
Yeah, well, I think we as seniors have got to. When I took the job, somebody said, "Oh, well, you're working on senior issues. Seniors have a lot of political power." We don't, because it's not organized, and many of us don't vote just as a senior when we vote for candidates, and in a way that's good. We're not greedy geezers, and all we care about is, what are we getting from the state? But I will tell you that the way we got the no fare bus passes back, thanks primarily to the senior centers, is on about 3 weeks' notice, we overflowed a room at the Crown Plaza with 320 people. We didn't even give them coffee. And the Speaker of the House and the couldn't afford water.
I think water. I think we got water.
And the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate came, and frankly, I think they really began to see the potential in all this, because it's hard to turn people out. And the way we do it is through small group meetings and building relationships. But as seniors, we've got to get involved. And these are not just personal problems that each family has to solve on its own. These are community problems. And I think there's no way around that there's going to have to be long-term agreement within our states, politically and otherwise, to invest in some of these programs. Fortunately, we know some of the things that work well from other states. And we hope to bring a conference here in the spring to look at that, but we asked the people from Washington State about this.
You showed me some
reports on
that,
the slides. In Washington State, and it took them like 15 years, but they had a long-term plan, and they keep many more people in the community. But I asked, the fellow was the architect, and I expected some technical story, and he said, no, he said the first thing was we had a set of values from the top down, and one value was people deserve to be able to make choices. People deserve even to be able to take some reasonable risks. It all has to make sense financially. We might all want 24-hour nursing service at home. It doesn't make sense. But over time, I mean, they really made some dramatic changes. There's not time to go into that here, but it can be done.
I think those comparisons that you make across state lines, we're doing that in the business community where we're seeing an unlevel playing field, that the business communities actually has to compete against. And that's one of the reasons why when you talked about resources, right, I really think it's important, this is my own editorializing, that we pay attention to creating a strong foundation for the economy in the state of Rhode Island. And that's one of the reasons that we're supporting the small businesses as strong as we have. Because the stronger our business community is, the more jobs there are, and the more money people make, and the more money people make, the more taxes people pay. So this is one of the reasons why I think the connecting in, Bill, is so important, is that if we want to have programs, which we should, we really should be paying attention to really having this is my thought process, a real strong foundation on the business side of the thing, and the jobs, because then you're not going to be fighting over a a pie that's this big. You're going to be fighting over a pie that's this big, and it's going to be a lot easier to do some of these things. So hopefully we're headed in that direction.
If I may, Governor, just to give an infomercial, on October 20th, we do an annual conference every year, and a lot of it has involved kind of education about different programs. We've helped bring a couple programs from other states here. One is called Powerful Tools for Caregivers. We previewed it. But we are focusing, in the whole morning, we're just going to talk about building senior power. We're going to have a panel with legislators say, how do you influence legislators? How do you influence legislation? So October 20th, and our goal would be next year, or in 2018, we have a governor's candidates forum, which we do every 4 years. Last year, the last time, 2014, we had 360 people. If we could fill that room with 600 people, and I think get more commitments to long-term investment and action on this, the thing about it is, if people really have choices and really can feel safe, that these are safe choices because they've been vetted, people will almost always choose the least expensive type of care in the community. And so one of the things other states have done is improve their programs where people can get care paid for by Medicaid from friends and neighbors and so forth. Now, you have to do a whole lot of things to put that together, but it's been done. And in Washington State, they reduced their after about 10 years, they had it all together, like their nursing home, as their population was going up, went down by like 12,000 people in nursing homes. Dramatic. Now, they've led the country, but Minnesota, others.
Oregon, too, wasn't that another state that did something?
Somebody once said, you know, if people really care about making it long-term, move to Oregon or Washington or Minnesota. Minnesota's kind of cold instead of Florida. Florida doesn't do a very good job, believe it or not, on senior services. And people do come, some of the snowbirds come back. Yeah. But the message, seniors, we have to get involved and reach out to each other and really demonstrate that we've got some organized power. And if we can.
So I think when you bring those topics up, Bill, it's really important for everybody to listen, and that's why I keep on going back to the economy, especially what Maureen talked about. If we're going to have a growing percentage of a finite population in the state of Rhode Island, that's going to create some serious economic issues to deal with. Because if the workforce is shrinking because the non-workforce is growing, we need to deal with that issue, right? So I'm a big advocate to have a population growth strategy in the state of Rhode Island so that we can actually make sure that as certain populations grow, that we're replacing that with incomes that actually can support this work.
You know, I'm glad you brought up the issue of the economy, because I think people fail to realize the economic value that our senior population brings to the state, and that's something that we talked about in our report. Social Security payments alone to our older population bring in close to $3 billion, and that results in almost $5 billion in economic output. And then if we look at the value of their caregiving to spouses and people in their family, it is enormous. It's something like $1.9 billion valued at. And then if we talk about volunteerism and what they bring to the community in terms of their volunteer efforts, it's really enormous. And if we look at the 65 and older population, more and more they're staying in the workforce. The last data I saw from our Department of Labor and Training, it was almost 20% of people 65 and older are still employed. And so they're bringing in taxes.
Oh yeah,
and
no, I'm not denying that.
No, I'm
just saying we need to create a young crew of people intentionally, because the Social Security, a lot of people live on Social Security, they need the services that Bill's talking about, and if you don't have the foundation to allow that to happen, then you're going to have a problem supporting those programs.
Right? I agree with you, but I just want to point out that our older population really contribute in a valuable way to the state's economy.
So, we're going to take a little shift here because we got about 25 minutes left, 25 minutes left. And I'm going to have the detective kind of really dig into the senior abuse issue. And as we go down the line here, if anybody has some thoughts about this report as well as the senior abuse issue, we'll give it an opportunity to everybody kind of weigh in. And that's probably going to give us a chance to go around one more time, potentially with 30 seconds or so, and fill in the things. But detective, please set the table for the senior abuse issue, please.
Boy, what a change in topic within the company. See how I can transition that.
Yes, transition into that.
First of all, I'd like to say that the senior centers are, when you're talking about financial stability and assistance, they often get a wealth of donations of wheelchairs and walkers and other types of assistance for senior citizens that they can go and borrow for long term or keep and help them out, because these types of pieces of equipment are very expensive. And you know, insurance doesn't always cover that, but you can always look toward the senior centers to help out in that area. I've often sent the elderly out to, especially our Westerly Senior Center, which has a large storeroom of that type of things that can help senior citizens when whether they're in the bathroom or in the kitchen or trying to walk up and down ramps and things of that nature. That being said, as an investigator, what I try and bring to the table is different agencies, whether they be healthcare providers.
Senior abuse issues?
Yep. Yeah. Whether it be healthcare providers, the State Ombudsman's Office, the Department of Elderly Affairs, the community action programs, because there's different types of issues of neglect. There's self-neglect, where people are not caring for themselves, and in doing so, they're losing their health and welfare, and they're not reaching out to the public, and they become depressed and alone, and they don't know how to reach out to the community. There's the care provider neglect, where, you know, often these are family members, husbands, wives, children, brothers, sisters, or friends and neighbors who end up under great stress and anxiety because the issues of somebody with a physical or mental loss in their being becomes overwhelming, and the abuse comes in the fact not that they don't love the person they're trying to care for, but the stress becomes so overwhelming they begin to blame themselves, and then as it goes down the road they begin to blame the person they're trying to provide the care for. And that can become mental and physically abusive. And we want to get to it before it happens. And the Department of Elderly Affairs, especially that manual you have by your right hand there, is extremely important, because it shows all the different types of opportunities and resources that are there to help these people. Because a lot of people are just afraid. They're afraid to tell on the family members who are abusing them so they don't reach out, or the family members are afraid that they're going to get arrested because, you know, maybe they grabbed someone's arm too tight or they were yelling at them too much. So they shut out the outside world, and we got to let them know that it's okay to open up and let us in, that we're there to help. We're not there to criminalize what you've done initially, unless the criminal intention was intentional and they were actually there attempting to abuse somebody for a gain of some type of asset, whether it be financial or other. So the idea is to be able to reach out to the community and try and get them to understand that we're there to help them.
You talked about earlier about the role that the caregiver as well as the person who's receiving the care kind of need equal consideration.
They can both be victims.
Yes.
Because they just don't understand how to care for the person. And they feel greatly that they're supposed to be doing all this work, but they got to understand they got to reach out to the community. Someone gets into a position when they're dealing with somebody with onset dementia or Alzheimer's, who, you know, can't care for themselves, can't go to the bathroom by themselves, don't even know who they're talking to. That's not something you can do by yourself. That takes a community. It doesn't take a community just to raise a child. It takes a community to raise everyone. It's about a fabric of America, that community coming together to work together for welfare and prosperity. And that's the real issue here, is trying to get them to understand that they can reach out to these different organizations. That being said, I often use the Department of Elderly Affairs to go in front of me, because when it comes to some type of self or criminal neglect, from a law enforcement point of view, I need probable cause to get into a home, which means I need to know that beyond some reasonable doubt that somebody's in imminent danger, and even on top of that, I need a search warrant to get in. The Department of Elderly Affairs, they need no such thing. They have the right, based on a report of abuse or neglect, to be able to go and check on a senior citizen, to be able to walk in and get to them and make sure that their care needs are met. And they're also HIPAA-free, which means they can find out somebody's medical records and find out what types of issues they may have and help care for them.
Well, that's a good setup. You got one more thing you want to put in there?
Well,
Yes.
when they are having issues of getting in the home, that's when they contact me. And we
Yes.
get together and we put together a plan of going to the home. And normally I can have someone come to an understanding that we're coming inside one way or another.
And your local police departments really are geared up for this, right? I mean, I know that ours was in Cumberland, and that was part of our accreditation strategy.
They are. The great thing is to be able to get together with you. Like I know the people in my senior center. I know the Department of Elderly Affairs. I've met them before. They call me, and what I do, I like their information, because when they can give me professional information, that's a statement I can use if there's a criminal problem to prosecute with.
And a
more
lot of
than just
times
a
they
normal
may
person.
be attending, they may be an attendant or participant at the senior center, so we have already developed
Right.
A relationship with the individual.
Yes, and
so
that's that community policing that we talked about earlier in the
Right.
show. I mean, you're there to be helpful, and police departments
Right.
are that. And as being a mayor, former mayor, I know that that's what our police department did.
Right.
And you know, so that's good. A good setup. So, Mary Lou, why don't you you work off of what the detective just said, and tell us what that means in terms of the senior center, and why the senior abuse issue is something that we need to keep our eyes open for.
It's it's probably one of the more difficult parts of the job, because sometimes we don't we don't hear about or get this case until it's really blossomed into this awful situation, and it's too bad that we can't get in at the front end to be able to share the information that we have available, and to be able to work with these individuals before it gets to the point where it's a catastrophe. And unfortunately, and I'm sure you've seen it too, that sometimes our hands are tied too, because the person has the right, if they are deemed competent, to be able to make their choices, which we want everybody to be able to make their choices. But usually, it takes some big event for someone really to get the support.
And it's not easy to get information out, is it?
No. No.
I find that's one of the more frustrating parts about the public service is no matter how hard you try to get the information out, there's always someone to say, "How come you didn't tell me that?" Or, "Geez, you should do a little better job getting that out." So,
and I think on terms of the caregivers, they feel guilty that they can't take care of this problem, and it's not any fault of theirs or the person who's going through it. So there's a lot of emotional. That's surrounding it too.
The way I look at that from my point of view is that's why I get together with these different agencies, because if they call me, we're going to walk through that door.
Yeah.
And my job is not to put people into stress, but to bring that anxiety down. And I work together with the agencies, and we make a plan before we walk in.
Exactly.
To make sure the caregiver feels better about us being there. Yeah. And that the person who is being cared for feels better about the fact that we're there. So we give that information quickly and say, we're not here to make your lives more difficult. We're here to assist you and make your lives better, your welfare better.
I got to get the Boca here for a second, though, because of the elderly affairs. You're like the central spot for a great deal of information. So, so how are we getting the information out, and what does this mean to your office and the interaction between the senior centers and the police departments and the other constituent groups out there?
Well, you're quite right. First, I'm going to say, Detective, thanks to you. And I mean, elderly affairs, like I said from the beginning, we are responsible for investigating rather than 60 years and older of abuse, alleged abuse. And elderly affairs, we do have an umbrella of services. Elderly affairs has self-neglect, and we do have the Protective Services Unit, which deals with the self-neglect and the abuse. So we do collaborate with law enforcement, with the AG's office, and as a matter of fact, all the local cities in town, we do have an elderly liaison officer who we collaborate with. In the event, we get reports that come into our office, and then we are, by law, everybody here is mandatory reporter. So if anyone who has reasonable cause to believe that an elderly person is being abused, is mandated to make that report to DEA. And once we get that report, we have to go out there and make that face-to-face contact with that seniors to make sure that the allegations were, if it's founded or unfounded. And at some point, we do work with the AG's office, and we've worked on cases where perpetrators have been prosecuted. So depending on what the allegations are. So, but we do have a great relationship with law enforcement, because there are instances where we go into homes and the perpetrators don't want us to go in there. So we rely on law enforcement. That's where we rely on law enforcement. We give them a call and they come, they help us to gain access. And we usually speak with the client alone, because we try to do that so that there's no influence. Because if you're speaking to that client with the presence of the perpetrator, there's a fear. And another thing is, what's going to happen when we leave? Because they wholly and surely rely on that person to look after them. So we try to do our best to isolate, so that we can do our investigation and try to
So when somebody calls your office or the Elderly Affairs office, is it the senior who is being abused in their minds, or is it someone that's come somehow a family member that is? Who kind of makes the initiative to make the call?
Oh, that's a good question. Like I said, everyone here, we are mandatory reporters. We do get a lot of reports from professional people, doctors, the banks, because we do have a lot of financial exploitation cases, and self-neglect is also another big thing. So we do get people who call, and sometimes people living in the neighborhood, and maybe they're used to seeing maybe their neighbors coming out, maybe just getting their mail, and 2-3 days, they don't see that person coming out. So they become concerned, and that's where sometimes they call us. And our phone number is, our intake line is open 24 hours, because we do work, our office hours is from 8:30 to 4 o'clock. But after office hour, we do have an after-hour program. So any call that comes in is automatically routed to our after-hours program. So we do get calls 24 hours.
And we're going to get that number up. Do you know the number, or should we?
Yes.
Tell us the number.
Yeah, 462-0555.
Great. Jean, you started to talk about this issue when we were talking a few minutes ago.
Yes.
Please weigh in.
And everything that's been said is right on, but maybe just to talk a little bit about elder abuse. There are several kinds of elder abuse. One is the self-neglect, and that is when an elder does not take care of himself. But the more, I think the more serious and more difficult to identify is the intended abuse, intended neglect by a perpetrator. The person who's supposed to serve meals, provide meals, doesn't. The person who's supposed to give medication doesn't. Then we have verbal abuse, and I think that's a hard one to really pinpoint. I think culturally there are families who yell and scream at each other all the time. But when it causes,
Italians.
You've been in my house? Oh, no. Well, I shouldn't say that. That's not right. We do just fine in my house.
I'm an arguing member too. But when it takes its toll, when it causes harm and health problems, then it is abuse. There's the physical abuse, and that is easier, I guess, to see or to identify. And I think the fastest growing problem right now is the financial exploitation. And we're not necessarily talking about elders who have assets and a lot of money in the bank. We're talking about elders who live on Social Security, and their children are taking their money and living on their money.
And the most difficult to prosecute.
The most difficult. So those are the types of abuse.
So if you have that situation, what are we telling people
Which
to do?
one?
The situation of the money issue.
The money.
Where the people are taking their money, and somebody's taking their money, and they shouldn't be taking their money. What do we do?
Well,
what do they do?
We, as the Haven, have handled several cases of that, and the first thing is to go in and make sure that the senior is safe. And sometimes you have to convince the senior that they have to put an end to the access to the funds on the part of their child or their spouse. And
these childs are what, 60, 50, 60 years
yes.
old? Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Yes.
They should know better, right? But they
Well, there are a lot of unidentified mental health and substance abuse issues going on,
Yeah.
And which we never deal with in terms of working with the shelter adult or the victim, you know, because our emphasis is on making that person safe. But we have contacted the Attorney General's office. We've worked with the investigators there. We're working now with the state police and hoping to move forward some cases for prosecution. We've helped seniors go to banks and rename the bank accounts and take certain people off the accounts. What I've learned in the short time that I've been involved with the shelter work and the elder abuse work is that, but not unlike the poverty work I did for a long time, every case is one in of itself.
Okay.
What is the resolution for this one we'll learn from, but there may be other instances or other resources for the other one. So when I look around this table and I look at that report, I think what's really important is that we communicate the need to support our programs, senior centers, case management agencies, state Department of Elderly Affairs, elder abuse unit, absolutely. Because when we, in just our small agency, when we look at how we're going to help an individual who's been abused, I look to the senior center, to DEA, to the police department, to the case management agencies, to the ombudsman.
Yes.
There is no one of us who can solve the problem alone. Yeah. And in one particular case, we had an elder abuse awareness breakfast in June, and I just spoke briefly about one particular case that we were working on, and it took 10 organizations and individuals to convince and to arrange that person to go to a safe situation.
Wow.
And more agencies and individuals now to help plan for that discharge of that individual back to the community safely.
So we're going to move to Kathy.
Well, I think
Yes.
that all the things that are being said
Yes.
here is
And
true.
we've got plenty of time here. We got 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Go ahead.
But what?
Go ahead.
But what
Fill
I
us in.
think-
Fill us in. Round
What
us
I
out.
think is the most important thing.
It goes pretty fast, doesn't it?
And the thing that I've been trying to work on for a long time is the fact that we need a council in this state to study elder abuse. And it should be made up, like other states have made it up, with people from police departments, state legislatures, people that are advocates, people that work in the insurance company. So many states have this particular type of a council and committee. And what it does is it looks at the problems currently with the elder abuse, which, I understand that we, work on child abuse and animal abuse and all that, but very few people are bringing this to the forefront and saying how bad the abuse is in this state. I'm not saying physical abuse. I'm talking about the children like you're talking about who thinks their power of attorney is carte blanche to take all their parents' money. And how does that come to us? They may take that particular client out of that setting, put them in the nursing home, but yet still the family has access to that money. And I've been kind of like pounding this drum, as Jeannie will tell you, for a long time. And I've tried to get this going, and we've, it just never has come to fruition. But if we had these people working together, we could put some legislation forward that would mean something to protect the elders, as opposed to just putting all these bills that are random and don't really address a problem.
Let's work on that. We'd be happy to work on that with you. We ran out of time. I got to just say goodbye to everybody out there. Thank you for tuning in to Advance Rhode Island. We'll make sure that if you want to talk to any of these individuals, we'll get that information to you. And please, make sure that we take care of our seniors in this state. Right? Thumbs up? Okay. Okay. Good. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.